Well, that was a disaster.
Yeah. Oh, it does
Okay.
that. Sounds like the audio's working well now, though.
Yeah, I went ahead and muted everything that was going on the old computer.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and put out there that the Hollowman stream is fixed. Audio is fixed. No, why are you doing this? I don't
I
want
just
to talk
rambled
to...
about it for like half an hour.
You did? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super sorry about that. I couldn't, like, say anything or... Because he was, like, right there.
Right.
I couldn't pop out my phone and say, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and then the just messed up audio, too, so... Like, completely jacked up audio. Alright, so let me put the new stream out there. And I'm
Alrighty.
definitely going to have to edit that when I'm
Yeah.
done.
Thanks for sticking around, people who were still watching.
Yeah.
Mache was watching because I know he just he commented and said that the audio was bad.
Yeah, audio should be okay now.
Yeah.
And now my keyboard's just not typing. I don't know what's going on here.
Your keyboard's not working?
Yeah, I'm trying to, like, type in something to Twitter, telling people that the audio's back up and
I
running.
forgot to put on my trademark stoner hat for podcasts. There we go.
My keyboard's not working. That's weird. Let me just try it in Chrome and see if it works in Chrome.
I'm going to put fixed audio in brackets of sharing it here now.
Well, it works in Chrome. I just don't know why it's not working in TeamViewer.
Your keyboard?
Yeah, I'm trying to send out another notification, let people know that the audio's good. Anyway, let me go. I sent out another tweet to the about it, so hopefully.
Alrighty.
Alright, so let's go ahead and restart this deal, and we can get back into it. Anyone who's listening now, forget about the last hour. It's complete garbage. You don't have to watch it. Don't worry about it. Just pretend that never happened.
Yeah.
And we're just going to start everything back up from the top here. So
it's good that I didn't take my customary bong hit before everything went to shit. Now
yeah.
Happily.
All right. Well, getting back into the swing of things, we're going to talk about Holoman, which is directed by Paul Verhoeven. It was released in the year 2000, and it stars, I would say, Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth Shue, Josh Brolin, Greg Grunberg, and who was the woman? What's her name? The one that was the
redhead?
Like, yeah. Well, do you remember her name?
I don't know the actor's name. I don't remember the character's name either.
I think it was like Dr. Kate or something. I'm gonna take a quick look because I guess she's kind of a major-ish character.
Yeah, that's true.
Holoman cast, and her name is Kim Dickens. She plays Sarah Kennedy on there.
Okay.
And that
like
is
just
She's
like
like
all
the
the
yeah. And there's Jerry Slotnick. He's like the really weird looking nerdy guy.
yeah, that guy. Yeah,
And Mary Randall, which is like the black chick who's pooping on the toilet or whatever.
right. Yeah, he creeps on her. He creeps on
There's
every
so
woman in
many,
the movie.
yeah,
Her,
there's so many
and
weird
Bev and his
moments.
ex-girlfriend, and that chick who lives in the apartment across the street.
Yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff in the movie.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Like one of the things I said earlier is one of the main themes is in the movie is that Kevin Bacon's character really needs to fucking get laid.
well, the thing is, it's like he should have no problem getting laid. That's the
Yeah,
problem. It's
yeah,
like he's shown as being like this super successful genius scientist man, and even with all that, he still needs to be creepy and rapey and all that. It just doesn't make sense. But you have to create a villain, right? So, I
yeah,
well, I'd say he's a good villain. Like he's super creepy. Um, he's like full of himself to the nth degree. He's like
yeah,
super arrogant. He thinks he's God.
yeah.
You
And
know.
that's interesting too because you like when you first start off watching the movie, if you don't know anything about it, you'll think that he's the protagonist, but he's the protagonist and also the villain. And then, like you said earlier, Elizabeth Shue basically becomes the protagonist, and he's kind of the antagonist.
Yeah, it's almost the idiom or the saying applies here. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. So what happens is he gets this taste of power and he uses that to terrorize or at least to get what he wants out of life.
Yeah, yeah, that
But
gets to. I was talking earlier about how there's the first time I watched this around the time when it came out, 20 years ago, because it came out in 2000. I I guess I was like 10 or 11, so I didn't catch the what seemed to me like one of the main underlying themes this time, which was allegorical in that we have this egotistical guy with a god complex gets godlike powers, it corrupts him and turns him into a rapist and murderer, and then he gets symbolically punished for it in the end by falling into eternal hellfire symbolically.
yeah, I remember you mentioned that. I was like, yeah, that really works with this movie. But I did actually take some pretty good notes on it, and we can go ahead and run through like the synopsis or whatever. So, movie opens up, and we have a rat that just gets let loose by a scientist, and we see it get eaten up by something invisible. Um, that kind of sets the tone for the movie right away. So that's the very first scene. Very first scene, we see a rat getting bloodily murdered. So I was like, okay, this is not going to be. Well, I was thinking if this is Paul Verhoeven, so he's not shy when it comes to gore, violence, and things of that nature. So I was like, okay, this is kind of par for the course for Paul Verhoeven, and I really didn't think too much of it. Um, but yeah, there was a interesting twist. We see the first character on screen, which is Kevin Bacon, and he's just typing away at a computer screen, and he's looking at some weird molecule thing, and he curses because it like breaks apart or it's unstable or something. And then he takes a break and he starts doing his peeping tom thing with some lady across the way in another apartment building.
Yeah,
And
that's like foreshadowing for how he fucking rapes her later.
yeah, it was a little creepy at that point. So it's like,
Yeah,
huh,
even
this
at
guy's
that
kind of
point.
weird.
Yeah,
It's like okay, that's That's wrong, but all right. But at least the curtains close before the big titty reveal, so he doesn't get to
Yeah.
see anything.
Yeah.
So he bangs away further at the computer, and then he stabilizes this molecule.
Yeah.
Gets super excited about it. So Kevin Bacon calls his colleague Linda, like right in the middle of the night, letting her know that he cracked the reversion, and that he's been fueled by coffee and Twinkies. And I think she was like, was she in the middle of coitus when he called, or were they just sleeping?
They were sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were just sleeping.
Yeah.
So I guess he's cracked like this big thing, and he calls everybody for a meeting. I think the next day, right? And it
Yeah.
shows that they meet at some. It looks like an abandoned warehouse, but it's like some huge, like underground scientific, like secret facility.
Yeah. It's like a secret underground lab.
And it's like it has like pretty heavy security. So we quite don't know what's being worked on here, but I guess they allude to the invisible like rat massacre. That might be
Right.
it. So they go down into the underground lab, and we see a bunch of different animals in cages just going haywire. And then we see that some of them are invisible. So one of the odd things that happens here is one of the animal caretakers is trying to. I don't know, what is he trying to do with this gorilla? It's just like corral it
I,
somewhere.
I don't know. Like, um was he trying to inject it with like a sedative or something? Is that what he was trying to do?
I
Or
don't
was
know. The only thing I know is like he opens the cage, and the gorilla just like beats him up, and the gorilla goes runs away. And then him and Kevin Bacon have like a contest of who can shoot it with a tranquilizer first.
right? Right.
Because Kevin Bacon is like super competitive about everything apparently,
Right. Right.
and he bets him $10 that he nails her first. That's what he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so eventually, yeah, Josh Brolin does miss his shot, and Kevin Bacon makes the shot. So he is owed $10, and he gloats over Josh Brolin. We kind of get this is like them starting to show that Kevin Bacon, even with his colleagues, is somewhat of an assholish character.
Yeah.
Especially when the animal the veterinarian. So they have a veterinarian on staff because they have to take care of all these animals, and the veterinarian is really upset that they're using the gorilla as a test subject out of all of the animals. And I think he gives her like a super snide remark about it.
Yeah.
Because it's weird, because sometimes it sounds like he's joking, but it's almost like he's not. And he's extremely serious about some of the things he says.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I know the next thing they do is they start to they actually catch the gorilla, and they put it in, they strap it to like a table in the lab,
Right.
and I think Kevin Bacon declares himself as God at that moment.
Right.
So they inject it with this stuff. It's like some weird glowing red stuff, and the gorilla starts to, I guess, phase out. So it starts. I guess this is back in the 2000s. They were probably like really happy about, hey, let's show off this crazy computer animated
Yeah.
stuff here.
Yeah,
and you
they,
get
they
to
really
see,
went all out with that in the movie, hey?
yeah, especially with like, oh, okay, let's see what we can do with computers. Oh, we can make like the insides of a gorilla visible. So you get to see like a muscle gorilla, and then like the muscles fade away, and you see like internal organ gorilla, and then you see skeleton gorilla, and then the gorilla finally disappears and is invisible.
Right.
So they make the gorilla invisible, and of course everyone's happy. But the experiment isn't over really until they bring the invisible animal back into the visible range.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they start bringing the gorilla back. They inject it with more stuff. I know they spray paint like the gorilla's arms so they can see where to inject it. And then as the gorilla becomes visible again, and when I mean visible, it's like its skeleton shows up first, and then like its internal organs and the muscles. Um, the gorilla literally goes ape shit. Um, it starts freaking out, and they bring out the defibrillator because I think its heart stops or something, and
Yeah.
they shock it back to life, and they're able to stabilize the CG gorilla because at this point the gorilla, I think throughout the whole movie the gorilla is like a computer generated construct if I'm not mistaken.
Is it?
I don't think they use a real gorilla at any time in the movie.
Okay.
But the CG gorilla becomes visible again, but there is one point where instead of a CG gorilla, it's an animatronic gorilla.
Yeah.
So there's no real gorilla. It's either the fake animatronic gorilla or the CG gorilla.
Yeah.
Um, and then at the end of the experiment, and we don't even know this is a joke, but Kevin Bacon uh, is like, "Yay, this is a successful experiment. Now we're going to need to dissect the gorilla and do a bisection or whatever." The veterinarian gets super pissed off, and Kevin Bacon's like, "Oh, that was a joke." It's like, okay, he said it with the most serious
Yeah.
face. Um, but yeah, that's another thing that shows that how much of an asshole Kevin Bacon is. I forgot his name of his character.
Yeah. I
Do you
forgot.
remember? I just call him Kevin Bacon.
No. Yeah, I call him that too. I can look it up here.
Yeah, so I know to celebrate their success, they go to a fancy restaurant,
Right.
and during that restaurant scene, Elizabeth Shue's character like goes out to the balcony, and I think Kevin Bacon's out there, and they talk, and then Kevin Bacon gets all creepy with her, and that's what he does. He just gets creepy with all the women
Yep.
in this movie.
Yeah, he really does. Oh, his
But
character's named Dr. Sebastian Kane.
there you go.
And Elizabeth Shue's character is Linda. Josh Brolin's character is Matthew.
Okay, so Kane. At this point, I guess we. I don't know if it was made clear when he calls her in the very beginning of the movie, but it's definitely clear here that they used to be in some type of relationship together,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to kind of rekindle things, but she straight up rejects him. But she doesn't reject. I don't get her character because it seems like she lets things get too far
Yeah,
and then she rejects. It's like, okay, if I'm saying like if her new ex was observing their interaction, my guess is that he would get pissed off at her.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sort of thing happens like a handful of times or so in the movie. Those moments made me think that I think it was supposed to be the case that her character kind of had doubts, and part like a small part of her thought it was worth pursuing, but then she pushed him away because she remembered that she's in a relationship with Matthew, Josh Brolin's character, and she should be loyal to him. I don't know how much or how much of it, or whether it's that, or that she just felt really uncomfortable, but didn't feel like the courage to push him away until it got farther than she should have let it get. And I don't know whether whether one or both of those, to varying degrees, were done conveyed intentionally that way on the part of Paul Verhoeven and the actors like Elizabeth Shue. I don't know.
Well, at least in the first like attempted sexual assault, she um, actually put some distance between them when he goes in for the kiss. Because
Hmm.
there are other moments during the movie where he's successful in planting the kiss and then she kind of rejects it. So we do see here she rejects his kiss, and a dejected Kane returns back to the lab. So we see that Kane has some type of conference with these generals, and he brings, and this is the next day, by the way, he goes to Washington or the Pentagon. Because I believe this movie takes place in Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
He goes to the Pentagon, and he has Linda there with him, and he lies to the generals, letting them know that they did not complete the experiment and that they need more time. So what happens is after the conference, I guess they're supposed to move on to phase three once they successfully do that part of the experiment. But he wants to do phase three on his own.
Hmm.
And phase three were the human trials. And now that I'm thinking back about the movie, maybe that was always his intention, was to do the human trial on himself
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
because he wanted to be invisible and perv out. so, so anyway, yeah, he keeps the success of the experiment under wraps, and he lies to the team and tells them that they got approval to go into phase three,
And he
and that
makes Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin's characters. He kind of like manipulates them, or somewhat forces them into being included in his lie.
yeah, because if the lie was uncovered now, it would actually be pretty bad for their careers. Um, so they had to kind of go along with it. Um, so I know after this, there's a scene where Elizabeth Shue attempts to get it on with Josh Brolin, and we see that Josh Brolin is kind of insecure about Linda's past relationship with Kane, um, but they end up getting it on anyway. The next day, back at the lab, Kevin Bacon does some Superman joke about Invisible Man um, getting fucked up the ass or something by Superman.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's funny. That
it's like it's like a long and elaborate joke about Superman seeing some chick
Wonder
and
Woman.
seeing Wonder Woman, and who was the one that got fucked up at the ass? It was like an invisible dude or something.
Yeah, I think it was the Invisible Man, or I forget.
Yeah, it's such a long and dumb joke,
Yeah,
but it's okay.
yeah. tries to go down on Wonder Woman. So, oh yeah, the Superman tries to go down on Wonder Woman so fast that she doesn't even realize that it happened. And no, he he plans to like fuck her while he's invisible, like rape her so quickly from his superpowers that she doesn't even realize this happened. The and then the guy who was clearly going down on her says, "I don't know what just happened, but my asshole is sure sore."
So, they're getting ready to do the experiment, and Kevin Bacon disrobes. So you see Kevin Bacon's buttocks on display in the
Mm-hmm.
movie. We find out that the serum is radioactive. Radioactive.
Yeah.
Ah. Um, so they inject this radioactive serum into Kevin Bacon, and he's like super disappointed because it doesn't work at first. But then he starts to spaz out, and the first thing I think that disappears is his dick, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it? I didn't remember that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the first thing that disappears
Oh, okay.
because if it's because it's a movie that had a theatrical release, and you have a naked Kevin Bacon that refuses to like wear anything. Of course, they're gonna make his dick disappear first,
Yeah.
so they can continue to film him like normal. But he
Yeah.
does turn into a CG Mr. Goodbody. If you
Yeah.
don't get the reference, just type up Mr. Goodbody on Google, and you'll know what I mean. So
Mr. Good
eventually,
Eddie?
a good body,
Good body?
Mr. Goodbody. Yeah, it's a kid's show. it, he turns into that. So anyway,
Okay.
eventually he does turn invisible, and there's like something here that they do that I'm kind of surprised they didn't do anything with in the rest of the movie. But when they touch him, there's like electrical charge just like coming off of him. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this sounds like it might be significant later, but it's actually has no impact on the rest of the movie. I just think they did that maybe because they wanted to show off some computer stuff. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the whole ordeal, he because it's pretty contentious. They don't know if he's going to survive, but he went unconscious during the process, and he wakes up eventually. And of course, the first thing he does is he messes with his colleagues. Um, so they put on some goggles to see him in the thermal goggles, and you can actually see his dick swinging in the thermal goggles, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool, that's a cool thing you did there, Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it was a body double or they actually made Kevin Bacon do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna have your swinging dick here on thermal vision. Um, and I thought this was an interesting thing. I just quoted it. Elizabeth Shue said, "The shoe is on the other foot." I was wondering if that was written intentionally.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even catch that. That's true.
I was like, I wonder if they wrote that because her last name is Shue. Someone had, I bet the writer was trying to put a joke in there, a pun in there. This had to
Yeah.
be. Um, so they leave. I wrote this note. They leave the mullet vet to watch Kevin Bacon. Well, I guess the veterinarian kind of has like a female mullet thing going on.
Yeah, a little bit.
So anyway, the redhead goes to sleep, and Kevin Bacon gets all rapey, right?
Yeah.
I think he unbuttons her shirt and fondles her breastises,
Hmm.
and she wakes up, but of course he's invisible and can't be seen. So she believes that something isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And her first person that she talks to about this is Elizabeth Shue. And she tells Shue that she thinks it was Kane that did this,
Yeah.
thinks that he's responsible. So, um, and this is like, And the vet tells Elizabeth Shue not to say anything to anybody else. So, anyway, immediately after this is that weird bathroom scene. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, where he's creeping on that black chick while he's invisible. That's a weird bathroom I noticed too. Like
Yes,
there are
that's the
just
weirdest
toilets
thing.
out in the open with no stalls. She's on a toilet out in the open with no stalls, and he's like creeping on her with his invisibility while she's peeing, but she has the goggles there, so she's looking around and she doesn't see him, but obviously he was just being elusive.
Yeah, so if you want to describe this bathroom, it's the most impractical public bathroom. It's a communal bathroom. It is not a private bathroom because in this bathroom we see urinals and, obviously sinks. And it appears that there's a random toilet, and the toilet seems to be elevated, so it's not on the ground. It's like on a little pedestal, and it's out in the open. There's no stall around it. It's just there. I don't know who designs a communal bathroom with a toilet just kind of sticking out there like that. But and I don't know, were there any stalls in this bathroom? Because I swore there were stalls. She just happened to choose this toilet that was just sitting out in the open.
Oh, there were? I don't remember for sure. I thought that I maybe only remember seeing one toilet, but I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, because I think, um, I don't know, if you go back to that scene on the right hand side of the screen, I think there's like a stall back there.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, why is she using this toilet? Like anybody could walk in through the front like door and see her taking a crap or whatever she's doing.
Right.
There's no privacy. It's just a stall right in the smack. Well, not a stall, just a toilet smack dab in the middle. Like it's not literally in the middle, but it's like in the middle of the wall.
Yeah.
Anyone that walks in is going to see her pooping or peeing or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is obviously it's a communal bathroom. You could tell it is just by the way it's designed. So anyway, she gets weirded out because she believes that Kevin Bacon might be watching, and
What does it say about how creepy they already think it is that they're doing that?
yeah, because seems like every time something weird happens, he's like the most immediate suspect. So next thing that happens is they start to talk about they go in the break room. They start to talk about all the weird happenings, um, and they're thinking that Kevin Bacon is responsible for all that. Meanwhile, Kevin Bacon is dropping some eaves right there. So
Hmm.
he's overhearing their conversation about how they think he's the culprit behind all the creepiness that's been going on.
Yep.
Um, so the next thing that happens, I think there's actually a weird sexual assault thing that happens with Linda
Oh yeah.
that Kevin Bacon does. Well, and she's awake during this, right? Um, which is weird. So we get to see him being kind of rapey again.
Yeah.
And this is where we see that she doesn't reject him right away. It's almost like she's letting him feel her up for a few seconds before he
Yeah.
stops it.
Yeah. That part in particular is like that. Yeah.
It's like, okay, she doesn't really have her priorities straight right now.
Yeah.
So, next thing, uh, they inject him because they're trying to complete the experiment. So I think they're supposed to let him be invisible for a few days, and then they're coming back to inject him with the agent that makes him visible again. So they try it out, and it ends up failing pretty bad.
Yeah.
So he gets injected. Something doesn't go right. He says he can't breathe, and he just goes berserk. Um, and then he was like about to turn fully visible again,
Hmm.
but then he got no pulse, and um, when they're having trouble stabilizing him, he went back to going invisible.
Yep.
And because I think the crew is creeped out by his invisible shenanigans, they kind of force him to wear a mask, which is
Yeah.
where we get. I think this is where the title of the movie comes from. So the mask has like open nose, whole nostrils, open mouth, and open eye holes, and it just looks like a bald man with no insides.
Yeah. Nothing inside because you can see through the eyes.
Um, so now that they failed at the task, and it seems like Kevin Bacon isn't actively trying to figure out the issue that's going on with this serum. Um, it looks like it's starting to fall on Josh Brolin to figure it out, and he's kind of struggling, and he recognizes that Kevin Bacon is a genius, but that doesn't need the B and C to figure things out, and Josh Brolin needs to figure out the B and C to get the A, whereas Kevin Bacon only needs to figure out the A because he's
Yeah.
super smart.
Yeah.
But let's see. Um, Kevin Bacon is starting to get like sick. I don't know if it has to do with the thinking has something to do with him staying in invisible mode. But at this point in the movie, he's been invisible for like 10 days.
Yeah.
And he starts getting restless because he's forced to stay in this underground lab for days. And he gets up in the middle of the night and he catches um, Greg Grunberg reading a porn magazine.
Yeah.
And then he wants to go outside, and Greg Grunberg is like, what do I do? And Kevin Bacon just goes outside,
Yep.
And then Greg Grunberg calls one of his colleagues to let them know that he went out. I know he tricks the guard up top, doesn't look him in the face. He just kind of keeps his hood on. It sounds like him, so it must be him, right? So it
Hmm.
sounds like Kevin Bacon. So the guard is like, oh, okay, it must be Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
So he drives his Porsche and goes a night out on the town.
Yeah.
And well, he scares some kids, right?
Yeah. I forget. What does he do?
He's like driving next to a car, and I think
Oh, yeah, yeah.
he
Yeah.
wants to check out the lady, but there's like some kids there,
Right.
and he scares them by showing his hollow face to them, and then they freak out.
Right, right. And he like opens his mouth and to show them that he has nothing, like his mouth is hollow too.
Because I think he's wearing sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he goes back to his apartment to peep some toms, and he devises some type of plan to spy on his neighbor. And he goes to the neighbor's house, the one that he had been trying to see before from across the way. And he knocks on the door, and while she opens it, he slips through invisible, and she doesn't see him.
And he's like fucking with her at first because she opens the door at first and sees no one there, so she closes it. So he knocks on the door again and then sneaks in.
Yeah, and when he's inside, he's also fucking with her because I think she's like putting on makeup or she's looking at a vanity mirror, and he tilts the mirror a few times, and then after she starts to get freaked out, he attacks her like physically, and then everybody is on the lookout for him because they know that he escaped. So, meanwhile, while this is happening, Linda drives by his apartment and sees that his car's outside.
Yeah.
And she goes up into the apartment and sees the discarded clothing. And while this is happening, Kevin Bacon is getting his rape on.
Yep.
And um, he finishes his Inviso rape and goes and actually sees Linda. And he sees her in his apartment.
Yeah.
He's invisible though; she cannot see him.
Yeah.
And he washes up, and everyone meets up at the lab sans Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And at this point, they're really fed up with him, and they basically give him an ultimatum, like you better keep your ass in this lab and not go anywhere else. We're gonna go to the generals and tell them that you're fucking around. And this is when I think this is when they tell everybody that this is not this wasn't an approved experiment.
Yeah.
So they give him the ultimatum. I know later on Carter asks what he did while he was out, and one of the things that um, Kevin Bacon said is that, oh, I scared a girl. He did a bit more than that.
Yeah. No shit.
Um, so next scene, Elizabeth Shoes getting a visit raped in a dream. Apparently, she wakes up. We're made to believe that she's getting raped by invisible Kevin Bacon, but it's just a dream.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Brolin believes that he's solved the problem. Um, and he does his little demonstration, but it gets to 95% and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
and this is in my notes. I wrote, why isn't Kevin Bacon working on this? He's just, and I get it. I know why he's not working on it. It's because he wants to stay invisible for as long as he wants.
Yeah,
I don't think he really wants to finish this experiment. He just wants to be invisible at this point.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Um, and Kevin Bacon gets rapey with Linda again.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things where she isn't quick on the rejection, and it goes on a bit longer than it should.
yeah,
Um, which is, I don't know. I guess I can kind of get that. I don't. What I don't get is that they were in a relationship, so it's easier for her to be more forward, and I don't think she cares much about her job with him, if, if I'm not mistaken. It just seems like she's not a weak, not portrayed as a weak character.
yeah,
So this is kind of why it's a head scratcher, because typically when you think of sexual assault in like the workplace, the person who does it is the one with all the power. But it
yeah,
seems like she's not in a submissive position. So that's why it kind of gives me a head scratcher why she isn't more forceful and direct with her rejections.
yeah. Well, I think she gets like she is a little more forceful like the last time when he gets like ego's way more extreme than he did before and is like feeling her up and whatnot, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So let me.
Hmm? You still
Can you
there,
hear
Doug?
me?
Oh yeah, your audio just cut out for a sec.
Okay, you can hear me still.
Yeah,
Okay, I just switched over to cellular. So Kevin Bacon comes up with another freaking plan. And his plan is to mess with the camera because one, he knows he's being monitored with a thermal camera in his room. So he basically rigs the camera so it plays himself in the bed on a loop.
yeah,
So he does this so he can go escape the lab whenever he wants, and nobody
yeah,
will be none the wiser.
yeah,
So he does escape again. He messes with a hobo.
yeah.
Um,
that was that was just a dick move.
yeah, it's pretty messed up. And he goes over to Linda's place and spies on her. And he finds out that she is in a relationship with Josh Brolin. So he
Yeah,
freaks out and he breaks the window. And Linda is very suspicious. She believes it's him. And she calls the lab, and I don't know who answered the call, but they looked at the footage, and he was, according to the footage, asleep in bed.
right.
At this point, we all know that's not the case.
Yeah.
so, um, I don't know. I think this invisibility stuff, I don't know if it is actually affecting him mentally. I think it might have some type of side effect. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
That,
that's an interesting aspect of the movie too. Like you wonder how much of this is caused by it. Like it's not beyond it's beyond his control, and how much of it is incentivized by him having that power, and how much of it has to do with his actual character wanting to abuse his power, right?
well, I think it's a little bit of both because there's a scene here that I thought, I don't know if this was really characteristic of his character, but there's just like a dog barking and he gets super annoyed and he kills the dog with like his, what does he do? He like hits it with something?
He grabs it and he smashes it against the side of the cage several times.
Oh yeah, this was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Um, so he bludgeons a dog to death by smashing it against the edge of the cage. And the next morning, the fat lady, she finds the cage, confronts Kevin Bacon about it. Kevin Bacon's like, "Oh, it's in my room." And they check the footage, and of course, they see that looped video of him in his bed.
yeah,
Um, and then we cut to Linda. She's back at her apartment, and she feels like Kevin Bacon may be watching. I think at this point he isn't, but she is kind of paranoid about what's going on.
yeah,
Um,
rightfully so.
so while and I think he was there, right? Was he there? I believe he was.
Yeah, I
So
think he was.
yeah, he was there, and
He
then
was like,
she.
wasn't he like creeping her out by opening the window when she had it closed, and like, was this the part where she didn't know whether she was dreaming, or he out, or we don't even know whether she was dreaming or he was like coming really fucking close to raping her.
Yeah, they don't make it super clear. Um, they don't make it super clear about what is happening, but it could be that he's doing that stuff. But the one thing she does do is that as soon as this stuff happens, her first thought is to go straight to the lab,
Yeah,
and she does. She looks at the video screen and sees, oh, it shows him sleeping, and then she goes to the room and checks the room, and he's not there.
yeah,
So the jig is up. Um, After that, they have a meeting and about what's going on with the video screen and the video footage. And of course, Kevin Bacon is dropping Eves again.
yeah,
Um, yeah, dropping Eves. So Linda talks is had enough, and they already warned Kevin Bacon that if he went outside the lab again, that they were going to go to the Pentagon and tell him everything that was going on. So that's what happens next. She goes to their liaison and she tells him the whole story that they lied to them and they actually started going into phase three.
yeah,
He's pretty pissed off about it. Um, and he basically tells them, yeah, you're going to have to clean your desks out. This whole charade is over. And while that's happening, I believe Kevin Bacon is spying on them,
yeah,
and he overhears everything, right? So after and they go, was it Linda and Josh Brolin together?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they were together when they informed them. So after they leave, the dude goes out to his pool, lights up a cigar, and Kevin Bacon starts to turn into a rampaging murderer, and his he's getting creeped out. I think what happens first is that his phone line gets cut. Because
Yeah,
Kevin Bacon doesn't kill him right away. He like messes with him first.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so eventually he does attack the man. Um, he pushes him in the pool, and then he goes into the pool with the man, and he holds him down.
yeah,
So the reason he cut the phone line is because the Pentagon guy was going to inform everybody about what was going on, so he
yeah,
wasn't able to.
yeah,
The wife finds him in the pool unsuccessfully, is not able to save her husband.
Yeah.
So, this is when shit starts to hit the fan in this
That's funny.
movie, and everything is just, to me, it turns into kind of like an alien movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like, there's this one, like, basically it turns into a horror movie at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a threat, they're locked into this place with this threat, and the threat systematically goes and takes people out, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, Give me a second. I gotta just send a message real quick.
Okay.
Hold on. Just a quick pause here.
Okay. Uh,
Well, here's what we say. I can give you something to chew on here. Um, yeah. So here's something that you could chew on. They all go back to the lab. What happens next?
oh, they all go back to the lab. Well, so they go back to the lab, and is this when are all are oh yeah, yeah, yeah. All of them are there. I think they kind of split into teams and all put the goggles on and grab those tranquilizer guns, and then they go off hunting for him in groups, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So the first, like I said, people systematically get whacked. The first person who gets killed was Toilet Lady.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot did I write down how she gets killed? So they all go off, and she straggles back a little bit, and he snatches her up and kills her.
Yeah, yeah,
And she gets stuffed in the locker. They later find her stuffed in the locker.
yeah,
So yeah, like I said, they go hunt them down with the goggles and tranquilizers. Um, Next person that gets messed up is Greg Grumberg, but he
mm-hmm.
doesn't die right away. He gets choked out from the rafters, and
Oh yeah, that part is fucked up.
yeah. So I'm looking at him getting choked out, and I was like, dude, did the serum give him super strength?
Yeah, I know, right? And it
Because
makes him like immune to all of these injuries that should have killed him, seemingly too, right?
yeah, either killed him or put him in shock at least.
Yeah,
Because the dude's running around naked. He's not wearing any clothes. He's running around naked. He
yeah,
doesn't have any type of protective clothing or anything like that.
yeah, exactly.
So he corners Josh Brolin after he choked out Greg, and they have a fire extinguisher fight. So he uses a fire extinguisher to try to locate him, um, but he's not very successful. He actually gets beaten down, and then he gets rescued by Shu, and then Elizabeth
Right,
Shue. And Kevin Bacon flees while Shu tries to help out Josh Brolin. Um, so the others show up. Nerdy Computer Man gets left with. Nerdy Computer Man and the vet see Greg Grumberg bleeding out on the ground because when um, he wasn't. It wasn't that the choke that messed him up. When he got released, he he took like a pipe, like a sharp pipe to the abdomen or something like that.
yeah. He stabbed him all the way through his body with that, I think, right?
Yeah, so he was like bleeding out, and the vet shows up, tells Nerdy Computer Man to stop the bleeding while she was going to get help or some supplies or something.
Yeah.
So the vet is in some type of supply room, and she senses that Kevin Bacon is somewhere in there. So she takes a bunch of blood and just scatters it all over the floor. Ends up being useless because she scatters it in front of her, and Kevin Bacon's behind her.
Yep.
So she gets killed. Carter ends up bleeding out and dies. And the nerd gets killed as well, as he's on his own. Um, and we see that Brolin, in his injuries, he got stabbed too.
Yep.
So he's starting to bleed out also. And we kind of get the sense that he's not going to make it. It's a pretty bad wound.
Yeah.
So, next thing that happens is, are they going through the freezer area to look for supplies or something? Is that how they get there?
Uh, yeah, I think so. What were they looking for in there?
I don't remember, but I know they were in the freezer, and
Oh,
then
we skipped when the wait, I think we did. We skipped that part when the black chick dies and she knows that he's in the room with her at some point. So she has these bags of blood that I forget what they were going to use them for. Maybe they were going to use
the
them for
blood they were going to use for Greg Grumberg, who was bleeding out.
right. And then she sprays the bags of blood all over the floor so she can see his footprints to see his blood.
Yeah, and the vet does that, and she gets killed
Yeah, yeah.
because Kevin Bacon was behind her. So when she put all the blood out on the
Yeah, I got
floor,
confused about which woman does that. Yeah,
yeah, it was a vet that because
yeah.
the toilet lady she's the first one to die.
Right.
I just don't remember why they get into the freezer, but they get locked into the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Bacon turns on the freezer, and she's locked in, and she duct tapes Josh Brolin's wound together. That seems to work. So Kevin Bacon feels that he's victorious. He's taken out everybody, and the last people left alive are in a freezer that's locked.
Yeah.
So he's feeling high on life. Josh Brolin passes out in the freezer. And then we start to see some MacGyvering. And they both, Shu and Kevin Bacon, start doing some MacGyvering, all right?
Yeah.
So what is Elizabeth Shu's MacGyvering? What does she make?
Um, she does this sort of thing where I forget what it is exactly, but she basically makes a flamethrower out of a fire extinguisher, and I forget what she uses to
Well, that's
produce the
her that's
flame.
her second MacGyver. I'm
Oh,
talking
what was
about
the first
the
one?
MacGyver when she's locked into the freezer, like
Oh
how she
yeah,
escapes.
she sprays like she sprays like some sort of gas on it and then it freezes the lock so she can break it or at least partially pry it open with the crowbar or whatever. Is that what happens?
No, not quite.
No? Okay, I got that
Um,
totally wrong.
she makes an electromagnet,
Right.
and
Yeah,
she uses the magnet to move the locking mechanism outside of the door.
right.
Yeah, I forgot how she makes it exactly, and then she finds like some electricity, and she wires something up, and she makes like a magnet device.
Right.
Um, so yeah, the magnet is made. She opens the door. She drags Brolin out the freezer. Um, and then she makes the other um, MacGyver's the other thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing that she MacGyver's is Well, before she MacGyvers the flamethrower, Kevin Bacon MacGyvers some explosives.
Right.
He makes some explosives, so it seems like his plan at this point is to blow up the entire lab, get rid of the research, and he will live his life as an invisible person for the rest of his life and continue to be rapey and whatnot.
Yeah.
He's basically preparing to become an urban legend in DC.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as she's doing that, Elizabeth Shue is MacGyvering her flamethrower. Um, she eventually finds him because he's fully clothed, because he was about to walk out and everything.
Yeah.
And she sets him on fire for like almost a whole minute. It seems
Yeah. And
like
that's the craziest thing, that he survives and he still doesn't die after that.
not only does he survive, it doesn't. It seems like it doesn't slow him down whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it didn't even happen. And we see he gets burnt up, but like his crispy skin just kind of falls away and like he becomes invisible again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now he's fully invisible again. And he got away. So she initiates the sprinkler system. And when she does that, she gets into a fight with Kevin Bacon, and Kevin Bacon beats her down pretty bad
Yeah.
with, I think, like a metal pipe or something. And then Josh Brolin shows up and beats down Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
um,
He still doesn't die after that either.
no, Kevin Bacon comes back, and while he's attempting to attack Josh Brolin, he misses and he gets fucking electrocuted.
Yep.
Like, pretty bad. Like, you see that it's a bad electrocution. Typically, when you get electrocuted like that, your heart stops, but
Yeah.
apparently it doesn't really stop him much.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, as this is going on, um, they see that he rigged the place to explode, and they really need to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
So the thing blows up. You see some giant blue explosions, and this turns the elevator into like a rocket. Because they're in the elevator while this explosion is going on, so it blows the elevator up the shaft, and then it starts coming back down.
And this is the allegorical part where now he's been corrupted. A guy with a god complex has gotten corrupted by godlike powers, and he's about to get punished by falling into eternal hellfire.
Yeah, so they go climbing up this elevator shaft, and while they're climbing up, this motherfucker is still alive, and he grabs Elizabeth Shue's leg while she's climbing up the ladder. Oh
Yeah,
man, this guy just is invincible. He's like
really is
Jason
like the alien
Voorhees.
that way. Hey, you think he's
Yeah.
dead, but then he still keeps on surviving.
So at this point, I don't know why, but you could see his muscles. Do you remember that? That he was starting
No,
to become visible again?
no.
Yeah, because he was starting to become visible. I think it's because they shocked him, maybe? Is that
Okay.
what happened when they electrocuted him? He started becoming visible.
I
So
don't remember.
now,
That
yeah,
might have been
he's
what happened.
yeah, because when he comes back, he's just muscles now. He has no skin, no
Oh
hair.
yeah, 'cause it makes him. Yeah, there's something about that. How it starts to make him begin to be visible again, but it stops like halfway through.
Yeah, I know that you see his muscles. You can see that.
Yeah,
So they get in a fight again, and he gets creepy again, and he tries to kiss her.
yeah,
She hits some type of release, and the elevator and Kevin Bacon fall down into the flames. they,
yeah.
they are rescued by first responders, and the credits roll. So, oh man, such a weird movie.
Yep.
Um, I don't get the last part where they're trying to escape this fiery hellhole, and he has the time to stop and force her to kiss him.
Yeah. That's his ego though, right, man? That's like the what leads to his death.
Yeah, but the guy really has pretty poor survival. Like, even though all this shit is happening to him and he's surviving, he has some pretty bad survival instincts,
Yeah, no shit, man.
regardless.
Yeah.
But what is this? Why do you think this is so different than the other Paul Verhoeven movies are?
I really don't know. That's a good question. I was thinking about that because like it's pretty much not satirical at all. And but I think it still works really well as a serious movie. Like I was saying earlier that it's it almost looks like if you compare this to something like Starship Troopers or RoboCop or Total Recall, it almost seems like they're done by different directors, and there's still like a deeper underlying theme in this one, like there is in all of those, but those messages are conveyed very effectively satirically, and I think the message in this one is conveyed very effectively seriously. And so I think that's a really different aspect. And then I was also saying earlier that even if you don't catch these allegorical aspects of it, there's still a whole lot of really cool stuff that happens in the film, like all of the science fiction concepts to do with invisibility and what he does with that power and how much of a fucked up character he is and everything else to do with the movie.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I also feel like this movie, like compared to his others, is very claustrophobic. And I'm saying that because most of his other movies like span different types of settings. And we see in this movie, the vast majority of this movie takes place in the underground lab.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
And
claustrophobic is a good word for that.
like, there's only a couple other settings. Like, we have Linda's apartment, Kane's apartment, um, the Pentagon dude's apartment, and the conference that they went to. Maybe that little party that they had at the restaurant.
Yeah, yeah,
And then everything else is in the underground lab. So yeah, it has
yeah,
a very different feel from the other movies.
yeah,
As
it really
far
does.
as I think the horror element was done pretty decently.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too. Because
it's
it is really effective because you can't see him, so you don't know where he is, so he could pop out anywhere.
Yeah, and they get really inventive on how to combat an invisible man. You know, using rain, or not rain, the sprinkler system, fire extinguishers, trying to use blood on the floor. And I know a lot of it was, trying to show off like the cutting edge of computer graphics at the time. But I thought that they did a pretty decent job.
Yeah,
And this is the first time I've seen this movie. And I wouldn't, if I was going to recommend a Paul Verhoeven movie, probably this wouldn't be one of those.
yeah, I agree.
If you're a fan of his movies, though, I would say it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
But it's not like top tier Paul Verhoeven. I think
Yeah. I
top
agree.
tier we kind of save that for like RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Um, what else about it? Uh, I think it's interesting because if we think of all the bad guys in Paul Verhoeven movies, this is like the only one that gets super creepy and weird and like rapey.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
true.
the biggest thing about the worst thing about the main character, or like not the main character but the antagonist, is that he's rapey. That's the
Yeah.
deal.
Yep.
That's what makes him a bad guy, is that he's rapey, and because he wants to be rapey, he ends up killing people
Exactly. Yeah.
because he doesn't want to stop not being rapey.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's definitely weird in that way.
Yeah. That's almost the opposite of the protagonist in his other films, like the the Rico in Starship Troopers, the RoboCop, and Arnold's character, is it Quaid, or I guess two different character names in Total Recall. They're all like the typical hero fulfilling the hero's journey in a way.
And another thing is, it's like I guess Hollow can actually be considered sci-fi.
Yeah,
And it seems that Paul Verhoeven does have a penchant for making sci-fi movies.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I would say this one is the least sci-fi out of the sci-fi movies that he's made. Because it's not a future movie. It's not. I guess the sci-fi in this respect would be the experiment that turns people invisible.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's no world building. Like if you think of RoboCop, there is a world that's built. If you think of Total Recall, there's a world that's built.
Yeah, for
In
sure.
this world, it's just our world with someone doing some little experiment. So it doesn't have that quite broad sci-fi feel. It's a very small sci-fi story, opposed to RoboCop or Starship Troopers or Total Recall. But yeah, it is slightly sci-fi. It is sci-fi, but it's not on the same scale as his other movies,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
which is weird considering I think the next thing we would probably want to take a look at is Showgirls.
Oh
So
yeah,
that would be a huge departure from the usual Paul Verhoeven,
yeah, that's for fucking sure.
which I think is probably our next venture. Would be to check out that movie,
Sure.
and then I don't think we're gonna watch any of his foreign films. I think we're just gonna watch his U.S. Hollywood releases.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But you said you had watched this before, so when you watched it your second time, what were your thoughts about recommending it to anybody?
Yeah, I would definitely still recommend it. I would like I said, I didn't notice the underlying interesting underlying allegorical theme, so that's interesting, and it's also interesting even if you don't notice that. It's a good serious movie, even though, like we said, Paul Verhoeven usually does satires, or at least films with a lot of satirical elements, and I think it's a really interesting science fiction concept too, of being invisible, and how they're trying to do that, and how he interacts with the other characters, especially Elizabeth Shue's character, is really interesting too. And Yeah, I think it's a really good movie overall. But like you said, I don't like it as much as his other satirical films. But especially if you don't like satires as much, like used to be the case with me, you might like this one more than his other films. If you're not like a Paul Verhoeven fan for his Paul Verhoevenisms.
Yeah, I think if there is a satire in this movie, it would revolve around the rich hothead Tony Stark type characters and
Yeah,
totally
yeah, that's
making those people evil,
yeah,
evil
yeah,
and
that's true.
rapey. But Tony Stark in cinema did not exist at this point in time, so it wouldn't be really a satire on that character, but maybe the trope of hot shot, you know. But you don't really think of scientists as these like super arrogant hotshot people. Like typically you think of them as more as like introverts, and he's not introverted. He's
Yeah,
very extroverted and pervy.
yeah, he's more like the his personality is more of like the jock quarterback of the football team type.
Yeah, it's like if you put that person on a team of scientists, and I was just thinking, yeah, I kind of knew people like that that were super annoying in a workplace scenario. Um, not, I'm trying to think, not some even like I think of like some of my very early working experiences when I was just coming out of high school. You would have some of these characters that you work with that totally act like this guy. You know, unabashed opinions, totally inappropriate work ethic, and things like that. That's kind of what it reminds me of. He reminds me of a little bit, but yeah, it's very difficult to find satirical elements. I guess I kind of understand that they're kind of dealing with a serious subject here, which is rape. I guess that's the biggest thing that they're kind of dealing with in this movie. Like pairing rape with invisibility, uh, that's some pretty serious stuff, you know.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, there's not really any. Can you think of any points where you laughed in this movie?
Maybe like that joke that you mentioned. Maybe a
Oh, the
few
joke.
little parts like that.
Well, I kind of laughed during the bathroom scene because it just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, what's this toilet just doing there? This makes no sense. I was kind of laughing. It's like, man, that is one poorly designed bathroom,
yeah,
a communal bathroom.
yeah.
Because we do know it's a communal bathroom because I think someone else walks in, right? Like, doesn't the vet walk in there or somebody else walks in?
And she,
Because that's not
well,
the
I
only
think
scene that
we
takes
know it's
place in that
communal because,
bathroom.
like you said before, there's like he creeps her out by making one of the urinal flushes when she or flush when she's looking around for him because she gets all suspicious.
Yeah, and there's more than one urinal there, right? I think there's like multiple urinals on the wall.
Yeah,
So if you have more than one urinal on the wall, it has to be a communal bathroom. It wouldn't make sense to have a private bathroom with multiple urinals in it. This just doesn't make sense.
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I don't know. So weird. Um, but yeah, like all horror movies, the black person dies first.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I guess not, because the general guy kind of died first, but she
Oh
was
yeah,
like
that's
second.
true. She's like the first member of their scientific crew, though.
Yeah, she's the first member, but the first death would, I guess, would be the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon. He's really good at playing a creepy guy.
Yeah, no shit, man.
In half the movie, he was invisible. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, like, how did they filmed this thing if he's
Yeah,
only visible less than half of the movie?
yeah, I was wondering that too. Like, I wonder if they did some of the scenes with him physically there so they can get the eye lines right and other similar things. And then they
I think
filmed
I have
it
an
with
idea of
him
what
and
they
did the
did.
more digital aspects after also. I don't know.
Here's what I think they did. I think he was actually wearing the mask and stuff, but where the eye holes and stuff were, he was probably wearing like a green mask under that. So when they filmed it, they were able to fill that in with something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense for that part.
Yeah, so I think like every time he was wearing that mask, that was him wearing the mask.
That would make sense.
But yeah, I'd say good job at playing a creep, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah. Last thoughts. How many stars are you giving this one?
I'd give it 4 stars.
Yeah, I think I liked it. I was like really hooked into it,
Yeah, me too.
and I thought it was a pretty decent horror movie.
Yeah,
And I didn't think it was going to be a horror movie. I didn't read into this at all, but you could slowly see it turning into a horror movie.
yeah,
At
definitely.
first, you just think it's like some weird sci-fi movie. It's like, oh, what are they going to do with this invisible stuff? And then it starts to slowly change into a horror movie, which is interesting. And I don't know if, and I think that's an interesting question. Is it the invisibility drugs or something that's messing with his brain, or if this guy is truly demented? It's
Yeah,
hard to tell in this movie
yeah.
if he is like that, or if he got turned into this by the drugs that he had to take to turn invisible.
Yeah,
I guess
that's a
they leave
really
that ambiguous, and I
interesting
think that is definitely like a Verhoeven thing too.
to be sort of ambiguous about those sort of things.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
get you to ask a little bit of some
yeah,
questions about that, because I
yeah.
know the
That's
Starship
interesting.
Troopers. There's a lot of questions about like the motivations of the characters and the whole war and all that. Um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
and
interesting. How I didn't think about that as much until you pointed that out. How much his behavior, how much of his behavior being altered is due to him just wanting to have that power in the first place and his god complex, and then when he has this power, he thinks his morals go out the window, but he was close to that already, or how much of it is the literal physical biological effects of the drugs that he had to take. I didn't think about that as much. Yeah, it could be some of both, like other things in the movie that we were discussing.
yeah. So I'm gonna give it. I think I'm just gonna give it slightly lower than you did. I'm gonna give it the 3.7.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I'm giving it a 3.7 because I think I've rated at least some of his other movies a 4, and I don't think it's on par. Actually, you know what? RoboCop I gave 5. Total Recall I gave 5. I don't think I gave any of his other sci-fi movies a 4, to be honest.
Yeah,
So
that's a
I'll go ahead and give this a 4 then, because all of his other stuff is just outstanding.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Um, so yeah, I would recommend this to any Paul Verhoeven fan. It's different from his usual stuff, but I think it's worth checking out. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say the same thing that it's totally different from his satirical movies like RoboCop or Starship Troopers or Total Recall like we were talking about, but it's still a really good movie. Like whether I guess like if people are really big Paul Verhoeven fans for the satire, maybe they wouldn't like this, but the average person who just likes a good movie would probably like it. And if you like the cheesiness of Paul Verhoeven movies, but you also like just the type of science fiction aspects that he explores often, just explored in a serious movie, which most people watch Paul Verhoeven movies habitually probably would anyway. I'm guessing you probably would like this too.
Yeah, yeah. So the legend, Paul Verhoeven, we both give it a 4, which
Yep.
is not bad.